This is the Torg Eternity Delphi Council Debriefings, where the storm has a name. We are your hosts, Jay and Leamon, and today we will be finishing Act 2 of Unhallowed Data. And we'll start with Scene 3. We left off at the end of Scene 2. But before we get into that, we do wish to remind you, you can email us at torgdcd@gmail.com. We will read your emails, we'll answer any questions you have, we'll comment on comments, etc. And while we didn't have any emails on one of the previous Unhallowed Data episodes, there was kind of a question that I felt would be appropriate to go and explore a little bit. So the questioner statement was basically with the hard light drones of the cyber papacy. Do Pan Pacifica and Tharkold, with their higher than core Earth tech axioms, are they able to make some type of comparable drone that would be as physically, not hard light, but physically as sturdy, etc., as the cyberpapal drones? And even today in core Earth, as we know in the world, there's a lot of drones and stuff being used for combat and spying and stuff like that. And it was just basically asking, could you reskin the cyberpapal drones? And I think it's fine. I think if you wanted to do that, that you would be able to. The thing that I would make sure you understood, which is on page, if you look in the Cyber Papacy book, page 40, they get into, there's a sidebar called Drone Long Range Contradictions, which actually doesn't have anything to do with cyberpapal drones, or very little to do with cyberpapal drones. It's mainly talking about drones from other tech axioms. And basically, it's just remember to use the long range contradiction, which is if a object leaves you as a storm knight after 10 seconds, which would be about a round, or a kilometer in distance, it's no longer considered connected to you and therefore would cease to function, just like anything else that's not being connected by somebody. So basically, after 10 seconds leaving a storm knight's possession, most drones are functionally useless in low-tech realities. Their caveat is the Tech 26 hardlight drones from the cyber papacy, because they have and I will put this in quotes, a limited artificial intelligence. So everything in the real world now for the last year or so has been AI this and AI that. So we're not talking about normal programs.
Well, that's just catchphrase AI.
Right. Yeah, that's catchphrase
This is actual AI.
Yes, this is sentience. Actual, not just putting, not having a big database to find out the words people like to put together the most to answer a question, but actual thinking and logic and reasoning being involved. So if you're cyberpapal, you don't have to worry about the long-range contradiction because your hard light drone has this limited AI, but it's connected to you through the Everloft 2. So if it does something contradictory and disconnects, then you connect, or disconnect, sorry. So if it disconnects, that makes you disconnect. For any other drones, they would work at anything at their tech's axiom or higher, but they would stop working a round or 10 seconds, or if it's super fast, a kilometer after in distance. So did you have anything to add about your thoughts on using drones? Because I know you've had a drone pilot, cyberpapal, in a game.
Yeah.
And I have too.
In this one. There is. Kind of.
Yes.
Hidden.
Yes.
Yeah. I like using drones from other other realities because they're out there. Core Earth has drones. Pan Pacifica has drones. Tharkold sorta has drones. The I would usually like lower the stats a
Mm-hmm.
bit, like maybe lower the toughness or something, make them a little more finicky, somewhat than the cyber papacy ones. But also, including drones from other realities is useful because taking over said drones is actually one of the abilities of the control override suit, the drone override suit, and just a cyber deck in general. So it's kind of nice to actually give a character who is rocking the drone override suit a chance to actually use it if they're
Mm-hmm.
outside of the cyber papacy. That said, my personal preference has been that core Earth drones are basically like operated drones. Like
Right.
somebody is operating it usually. They're not quite at the level of having any kind of AI that can really do anything. Maybe there's some secret lab somewhere, in Boston Robotics has got
Right.
going,
Or
but
it's follow me, and then you carry your cell phone, and it just follows that.
yeah, stuff
That's
like that. It would either be like it if it's advanced enough to do anything, like it would be unwieldy
mm-hmm.
and not like combat capable, but anything combat capable basically has to be piloted by somebody remotely, and that could all be kind of interfered with. Whereas in Pan Pacifica, they would be probably on some kind of like again, like actual limited AI of some description, because we have seen that there's the FD 211 or whatever, the ED 210. There are robots,
Mm-hmm.
so there Pan Pacifica does have like actual robots uh, in it. There's like the RD1 defense robot.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of them. There's a few in the briefcase bot, the avian bots, a whole bunch of them in the Pan Pacifica book, and I would imagine those would count for drones as well. Although some of them are remote controlled if they're connected to the walled garden plexus sites, so those have to be interrupted in a different way through hacking. But if it's just like a drone, then it could possibly be overridden. So I like to have those as well. And in fact, there might be some in a threats book, but Tharkold's a little different because I kind of feel that the DGAM bogies sort of fit
Fit that. Yeah.
that. And so when they have a drone, it's actually got like some guy's skull in it, like so it's not AI, it's not remote controlled, it's being powered by like a brain, but just a brain basically, like not like a person. So I don't think those could be necessarily overridden, but they would still act like drones in the
Mm-hmm.
same kind of way. There might even be demonic drones that could be summoned from the Kerr. There's all kinds of other crazy things, and you could have. I would also think that the DGAM bogies and whatever probably also wouldn't have the disconnection problem, whereas Pan Pacifica and Core Earth ones would.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I could imagine. I also kind of figure that in Tharkold, because it's been such a forever war of constant like Eland battling, that regular drones would probably just get hacked by the other side so often, which is why Tharkold seem to always go with these crazy undead magical abominations that they
Right. Right.
use, not just like robots, right? So that's my theory anyway. You know, game masters are free to do what they want, and I fully endorse skinning stats from one thing to another.
mm-hmm.
Don't even limit yourself to drones. You could just skin the stats off of almost anything and say it's a drone. Just find something in the rough area that you're looking for.
Right, exactly. I am all for when we're talking not official, because we don't want to
Yeah,
just take other games and stuff and just reskin. But within your own game and
no, I
within my
mean
game,
stats. Like
yeah,
you
the
could take
stats
a
just
Lurk's stats
and just
and
say it's a
call it a
drone.
drone.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's something to that I use a ton. And when you describe it something completely different, and nobody ever knows that you just took the lurk and now it's a drone.
Yeah.
Okay, so hopefully that went over some of these drone questions or comments, and now we will get into Unhallowed Data scene, Act 2, Scene 3, which is at the Fontenay Abbey. Um, Again, last time we talked about the area was more of the wilderness area of the cyber papacy. It's not the big flashy neon and hard light projections and everything. It is the woods, the wilderness that have limited technology. While the axiom is not reduced by any means and everything functions as normal, the people in the area just don't always have everything there, or it's in little pockets. So like this abbey is a high tech small little abbey, and outside of it is all these woods and forests and things like that. So the Storm Knights approach the abbey, and then depending on what they do or say, they are met by, I believe it's Brother Gaston at first, and then they, which is a character. There's various monks, I guess you could say. There's the
Mm-hmm.
abbot, Brother Gaston, Brother Brian, Brother Paul, and Brother Raphael, and they all have their own completely different personalities and goals and stuff, which I think is kind of cool. So if you read up on these as a game master, or even if you're like me and just hit the ground running, there's nice sections for each of them. So when the Storm Knights go to talk to him, you can just go to that area, find out what their their thoughts and their disposition is, and then you can uh, tailor your adventure to them. But basically, they're met by Brother Gaston, who's kind of a gabber. He likes talking a lot and figuring out stuff. Um, he starts off with the, oh, you're not cyber people, so you can just sit around out in the welcoming area, but you don't get to go in. Normally, the Storm Knights would then say, "Hey, we're the special envoys," and then he would take the Storm Knights and kind of walk around with them. But he's also looking for the main the main abbot, Abbot Gerald, and will try to find him to then talk to the Storm Knights. So, what was your kind of encounter at this initial meeting and talking with the different monks?
So the abbey has very like a short wall around it. It's only 2 meters. So they basically did the same thing they did last time as the ex-church police with the drones sent a scout drone over to look and found that yeah, it was just some monks. So they approached the main entrance and they talked to Brother Gaston and got so they used him what's his name? It's been a while. Thomas, yeah. They used Thomas, the ex church police guy, who obviously is a cyber papa character, as their in. They talked with Gaston for a while, and then they eventually did give the special envoy status and kind of got the tour. I found because I looked at the map of the Abbey, and it is basically the map of the real Fontenay Abbey.
Mm-hmm.
So I found a nice isometric sort of map slash picture of the Abbey and used that and basically gave them a little tour around, but they eventually end up at the church, which is where uh, Abbot Gerald is, and he, is basically uncooperative. I don't think they really talked to many of the other brothers. They talked to Brother Raphael for a while, which was an
Mm-hmm.
interesting situation because Brother Raphael's the librarian, and he is like positive that there's nothing suspicious going on. And the funny thing is, I don't even remember how it happened, but they somehow got like an outstanding success or something on some kind of like just try to tell if he was lying.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, he's not lying because he actually believes that everything is
That's right.
above board, even though it isn't. So they were confused because they're like, oh no, there's nothing going on here. And so that kind of, because basically they show up, they talk to the abbot, and the abbot's like, because they say, okay, there was these five monks coming from the other abbey
hmm
here. Where are they? And he's like, well, they never showed up. And you should go trace their steps, just trying to sort of buy some time. Whereas in reality, they are there. They're down in like a little secret lab. But he doesn't, even though they're special envoys, he still doesn't want to tell them
hmm
because it's a secret operation, a blasphemous operation, if you will. So he's telling them no, nothing happened. They go check the records. Brother Raphael says everything is square. And basically, they were kind of didn't know what to do until they found Brother Brian, who was the one working on the cyber limbs,
hmm
and they saw his doodles and realized that he was the guy that made the cyber arm that the Gobbler had, and they talked to him about it, and then so this got into like a big argument because there's a dumbwaiter, and
hmm
he's supposed to put the cyber arms in the dumbwaiter, but it mentions that the dumbwaiter is too small for most people to get into. But then my players were like, how did they fit this giant freaking cyber
Right.
arm for the gobbler in there? And I was just like, I don't know, it's just diagonal or something. And so we
It
got into
bent.
like a bit of yeah, a bit of an argument about that. And I'm just like, look, I'm just telling you what's in the book. Okay. Um, because if you do make it big enough, then that's sort of a way they can get down there, which does kind of lead to the next scene. And in my group, I should mention we were using some homebrew perks and things. The Dragon Warrior was using some of the stuff from my Infiniverse Dragon Warrior book, and one of them is a rune that lets him summon his armor. So like he could walk around
Nice.
without armor and
Right.
then summon it on, kind of like a Sailor Moon
Uh,
transformation sort of thing. So they had to convince him they wanted to strip him down, and because he's a dwarf, he's smaller, and just shove him into the dumbwaiter and send it down. Um, so they somehow got Gaston and Brian on their side on all this and did it during Vespers or something, like when
hmm
there was something that called most of the rest of the monks away. So the rest of the party stood around and they shoved Greymane into the dumbwaiter and sent him down.
yes, I liked this scene. I liked the party. I remember mostly the one that I ran. Um, I liked how like Gaston is just a jabberer. He's just gonna talk and with everybody be very nice. Gerald is very much a this is my abbey. I don't like that you're special envoys. I am going to give you the absolute minimum that I feel that I must give you. But I'm not going to tell you the secrets. You're gonna have to I'm not giving you any information. You have to find that
Mhm.
information on your own. Brother Brian is kind of at first he doesn't believe that the things, the cyber arms and stuff he's making is being used and put on demons. He's very when he gets convinced that yes, this is what actually happened, he's horrified at what happened. He will try, as happened in your group, try to help the group with what he can. They have Brother Paul. One of the things at this abbey is they're working on some cyber hounds, and he's the one who's kind of like the cyber hound trainer or person trainer, um,
Installer
installer
and trainer.
and
Yeah.
trainer. And then yes, I remember my party absolutely hating Brother Raphael because of his there is nothing wrong in my library. There are no mistakes, and he absolutely believes it.
He had
To
spreadsheets to prove it.
he had, and then when the party made their find, their evidence analysis, all their checks, and had all of the evidence that there were some books that had been removed and there was some other stuff that wasn't right, even though the party had only been in the library when he was present, he accused them of messing up his library. Which was kind of funny, but they were able to find stuff. There's various clues, like you said, in one of the areas. There's some doodles that look kind of like whatever the dragon breathing fire slash dog
Mhm.
barfing that was on it. So they noticed that. They were also the how can we get someone down in the dumbwaiter. This was a place where we talked at the very beginning about the special envoy status. One of the characters had used a martyr card and had a new character, and that new character did not have special envoy status. So while everybody else at the beginning was like looking around and doing stuff, he had to stay back at the beginning foyer, and every once in a while somebody would come back and kind of update him, and there might have been somebody else that stayed with him because they didn't want to completely, have one person by themselves because there's suspicion, and every gaming party will never trust when one person is by themselves of that person not being attacked or whatever. Um, so that was kind of my you did a martyr card and stuff, but I don't want to just have this special envoy thing occur for every character, so I want there to be some type of consequence if a character is taken out and you bring in a new character. But they have the library that they go through, various offices. They find out, and even Brother Gaston had seen the containers that held the demons, but they've disappeared, so he's not sure where they have gone. Um, he and there's no reports of them going out. He claims, sorry, that it was a clerical error. So there's a lot of these monks who are things are proper, and either there are no mistakes like Father
Right.
Raphael, or it has to be some mistake because things aren't, shady. It's like nobody except for the abbot proper and the monks hiding in the secret area think that there's any type of shadiness going on unless, and even after evidence is like presented in front of their face.
I think there was a point where they made it so the abbot said there was a clerical error, but he said it in front of Brother Raphael, so that caused a schism.
Ah,
But I don't remember exactly what happened. Oh, excuse me.
that's funny. But basically, in the infirmary is a place that has a secret panel or that opens up the door that leads down into the secret lab. So
There's one in the nuclear reactor
reactor
as
as
well.
well. So as game masters, you can kind of flesh this out and have this be a really nice social and very social encounters, which I know a lot of times people get bogged down or they just want to get to the action, but a lot of people do like the social aspect of it. And this is one of those times in Torg Eternity where you do have kind of here's these five monks, here's their personalities, fill out what you need to be filled out with, and you can have some really good encounters and stuff as the Storm Knights look around the Abbey, go to different places, talk to different people, find out clues. They might be done talking with somebody, and then they go somewhere else and find something, and then come back. I think that's what happened with Brother uh, Brian in my group. Is they talked to him first, but they didn't quite link everything up, and then once they saw the doodles and connected the doodles to him, then they went back and were able to convince him, no, there was this, your arm was put on a demon and that. So
I think the nice thing too is it gives you some sympathetic cyber church members
Yes,
who are just monks and they're not actively trying to kill you or even
exactly.
stop you. The abbot is kind of, but the others are, you know, fairly innocent as far as things go.
And even with the abbot, it has specifically he he won't give any information, but he won't impede the Storm Knights unless they threaten violence. If they
Mhm.
threaten violence, then it says he threatens to unleash the dogs
Release the
on.
hounds.
Yes, but it says it basically is up to the point where if there's no violence being threatened to him, he just kind of you find it. I'm not helping you. So it's kind of like passive resistance instead of
Yeah, and he
act.
doesn't even really know what's going on either. He just
Right.
knows that these other monks showed up with orders above him,
Mm-hmm.
and he has to sort of do what they say.
Right. And
Not that they can say anything because they have no mouths, but you
right. Um, so then, however, the Storm Knights, whether it's the infirmary or the reactor, they can get down into the secret lab, and then that's where scene 4 comes in, which is a dramatic scene. So this is where the kind of the big reveal or part of the big reveal starts happening, and where your astute players will start maybe piecing together things. No,
know.
not our players. But if you have players that are astute and taking notes and trying to figure out stuff, then things start, pieces start fitting together. So they go down into the lab. There's a hallway, which, if I remember correctly, it almost has like Dante Inferno type pictures on the
Yeah, there's
walls and
there's all these
demons
demon faces.
and like screaming and in pain and glowing. It says glow. Their faces glow with red pinpoints of lights. Um, does say that there are small cameras that are tracking them. So whether or not the Storm Knights are aware of that, they are being kind of watched. It does say that like two of the monks are asleep, the other two are working on installing cyberware on demons, and then one of the five was slain by a demon that kind of broke loose. But as the camera eyes are following the intruders, they don't seem to trigger any alarm or alert. They just watch until the Storm Knights find the monks and start asking questions. And then the DSR happens, the dramatic uh, skill resolution, I believe. Or am I
Maybe
jumping the gun,
there
maybe?
is no there is one, but it's kind of optional.
But basically, the demon faces and stuff, like I guess they they
They're
turn
the big
off the gas and stuff starts coming out of the
yeah,
demon
that's the important
mouths
part.
to try to knock the knights out. It also says that the releases on the operating table open. A demon attacks, so they're dealing with gas. They're dealing with demons. They're dealing with various things. And the terminal inside the office begins deleting its data. So that's kind of where another part, and the DSR is kind of beating the purge, which goes into detail on what the steps are and etc. So there's multiple things going on. There's demons attacking, inky gas pouring out. There's a gobbler that was just released. There are 5 experimental cyber demons. So it can be a kind of a tough little fight depending on how dice get rolled and that. And then at the same time, there's the computers that are trying to delete the data that hopefully you have a Storm Knight with computers or Cyberdeck trying to stop that data from being deleted. So how did your adventure, if you remember, go in this?
I thought this was going to be the big epic scene after the fight with the gobbler the first time. I was expecting this to be a real big, dragged out, long combat, especially with the gas and everything.
Hmm.
So instead of the entire group of Storm Knights going down, they grease up the dwarf.
Right.
they they shove him into the dumbwaiter and send him down. And he squeezes out of it into this room. And it specifically mentions that the monks don't notice anything unless you are like extremely loud. So he summons his armor back on, and I think part of it I wasn't sure if the gobbler was actually part of the fight or not. Although I'm looking on my battle map and he's on there, but he took two shock from something. So what kind of happens is the computer starts counting down and deleting itself. So all we have is this eyelish dwarf who doesn't know
No,
anything
no, you're
about
right.
computers, and all of this, you know, the poison gas starts filling up the room, and he just runs and smashes the computer, grabs the stuff, and I think actually, I don't think he even put his, no, he must have put his armor on. I'm so foggy on how
Uh-huh.
this happened because he was the only one down there the whole time. He somehow smashed the computer, got the hard drive or some part of it,
Hmm.
ran threw that into, oh yeah, now I remember what happened. He threw that into the dumbwaiter and sent it back up, and then because everyone had the same amount of shock, him and all the demons passed out at the same time.
Because of the gas.
Yeah. And then the rest of the party eventually found their way down there before anyone had woken up and basically just grabbed him and ran off. But like, so if I was going to redo this, I would make the enemies, or at least some of the enemies, not take shock damage.
Hmm.
That was the big thing because he had more. Um, I think he had more spirit like than the experimental demons, but he had less than the gobbler. But he managed to damage the gobbler, and also, when he had his armor on, he had a toughness of 19.
Hmm.
So he was basically impervious to the regular demons. And now that they knew what the shtick was for the gobbler,
Right.
it wasn't as big a deal. I could see there are two dead monks on the battle sheet. So he must, they don't even have stats. So I think I just said you kill them, like
Hmm.
if you want to. So yeah, he basically soloed the room essentially, but he did it in a very destructive way and did not stop the data from being deleted. So they only ever got the most basic information.
Ah.
And this is what I was talking about, I think, at the very beginning when we were talking about this adventure.
Hmm.
My group went through most of it having no clue Eben Eskrux was even involved, like, or like what was going on, because they just kept getting the most bare standard successes on every piece of investigation throughout the whole thing. And this was really where it happened because there is a ton of juicy info in those
Yes.
computer banks, and they saw none
None
of it.
of. So the normal thing would be, I guess,
Yeah.
what more of my party did, which is they found the secret entrance behind the or inside the infirmary, went down, noticed the walls with the demons and stuff, got to the bottom, started trying to ask questions, and then the gas gets released, the gobbler gets released. You have these experimental cyber demons um, that are fighting, and they're trying to that use they had a cyber witch who was using computers to try to download stuff to be before or stop the data, kind of get the information before it's deleted. And there's a few things that it says, Yeah, I guess you had there's various ways. There's physical interruption, which is what your group did. Heroes without computers may wish to try to smash the computer or disrupt its power, recover the data from the fragments. So basically, that is an option. There's an option that is if they fail, they at least get a few little pieces, because otherwise you're not going to be able to move on with the adventure. Um, and it says that these five monks replaced a crew that went on to. And French is the
Calais.
Calais is my out of all European languages, it's the one that I have the most problems with. So I will say Calais. It says that they had went there. These new monks had came. So at least they get a direction of where to
Mhm.
go. Now, if your attempt succeeds, then you get all those juicy morsels of what's going on, which is basically that and as the evidence shows, cyberware is being put on demons, and the big juicy information is it's being orchestrated or under the orders of Ebenexcrest, the darkness device to John Malraux, and it's been giving these monks visions to a point where even though as we had stated in one of the earlier episodes, these monks, their vow of like silence even makes it so that they're not supposed to write or do anything like that. It's like almost like a vow of no expression. He has recorded this thing because he thinks God has come to him as the holy machine and has given him these orders and made him, see the grand scheme of things, and that he feels that his the other four that were with him were given the same type of connection with God. So that's kind of a big thing. The darkness device of the High Lord of the Cyber Papacy is doing heresy. And even though the monks know it, they think that this thing is God and are kind of double speaking and have cognitive dissonance where they know it's heresy, but they're being commanded by God, so therefore, can it really be heresy?
Yeah,
And they're
it's not heresy if I'm doing it.
doing it right. I'm doing it for a reason. So there's a lot of that's going on, and they Storm Knights, if they succeed in the attempt, then they're able to find out a bunch of that information. It also allows them to find out a little bit more of what happened with that resistance cell that the Tharkoldu had trashed, and then they tracked them to the first Abbey, and basically kind of maybe if the Storm Knights pick this up, they'll want to give that to the Resistance as a hey, here's what had happened. We finally found the pieces that the monks at St. Genevieve were specifically stealing data from the Tharkoldu about occult tech and how to adapt it so cyberware could be installed on demons. Early experiments seemed to mess up. The cyberware was rejected. The demon arms or legs or whatever was being replaced or regenerating. But over time, they started figuring out what to do. Also, the Resistant had hacked into the connection, were secretly following them, but then the Techno Demons discovered them, traced them, took care of them, then traced their piggybacking from the Abbey and went there. So it kind of at least sums up the reasoning behind the
Yeah.
first act. So it's kind of a little delayed, but at least if the Storm Knights were able to get this information, they kind of realized, oh, that's what it all happened there. Now there are these demons that were in the canisters or whatever that were getting shipped off to Calais. So that's kind of our next
Or
spot.
from
Or
Calais.
sorry, from from Calais, but that would be their next spot to go as a
Yeah.
who's kind of going back in the chain of
Yeah, following the
following.
leads.
Right. Um, so then there's a very quick wrap up scene.
Yeah.
Fine. It's not even a half. Well, I guess it's a half a page. It starts at the bottom of page 33 and ends halfway through 33, which is basically a Delphi Council operative shows up who is a member of the Marathon, which is the division, which is the messengers for the Delphi Council. He can kind of give them some type of gap, fill in some gaps for them. If they give him the data, he's basically able to take that or at least tell them that Calais is a mixed zone with the cyber papacy and Isle. And there's someone there with leet speak name of Ghoul 6H0UL who made the deliveries, but it's not known. How is he getting a hold of these demons? How is he containing them and stuff? But at least they have a name, and then is kind of like just a point them to Calais and says go in that direction. And then there's a little thing at the bottom which does say that at some point the Inspector Destine will arrive. Depending on how long the Storm Knights stay around the Abbey, he might even encounter them again. But it's like, do the Storm Knights just leave? Do they wait for him? Do they tell him, etc.? What's going on? As I've stated in the past, my group went completely with the we are telling Destine everything.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to send it, we're not going to wait. We're going to package it up as a message, send the message to him. So we're going to always try to be 1 or 2 steps ahead of him, but give him all legitimate information so that doesn't. They were really worried also that their special envoy status would be found to be kind of forged. So they were doing everything to reinforce hey, no, we're really special envoys, really. We promise. Look at all this information that we're being upfront with. But that's going to have implications in the future when Inspector Destine is going to see how he was treated and what information he was given by the Storm Knights throughout the entire mega adventure. Was it correct? Was it false? Was it part correct? And try to figure out stuff like that. So that is a part that even if the Storm Knights don't do it, and they just leave and they don't wait and they don't say anything, they don't send anything, that's still a piece that is going to be part of how he feels about them towards the end. So, how did your Storm Knights wrap up this act and head off to the next one?
They met up with Tenishoth, and they needed him to extract the data from the
Mm-hmm.
wreckage that the dwarf brought up, because none of them had any idea. So even the Cyber Papal and Pan Pacifica character, neither of them had computers, so they had no idea what they were doing. So they needed this guy. And yeah, so he dug out what information he could, and he gave them the info, and set them on their way. They did not wait around for Destine or leave any message or anything. So what I did, I believe, is I just sort of gave them like a little cutscene of seeing Destine
Mm-hmm.
come in and question people about them and what's been going on, so they could tell he was on following their trail.
Mm-hmm.
And then the way they did things, like the monks were all had very different opinions depending on which one he talked to. So there was like a brief thing about talking to people about the fire,
Mm-hmm.
like the pyre, the town, and then at the abbey, and then exposing the whole demon corruption thing. So I believe there was like a little scene of like actual church police coming in and things like that. Or perhaps, I think maybe he said something like he was going to forward it to the Inquisition and
Okay.
maybe left it at that. I can't remember now. It's been a long time. But yeah, I just gave them kind of like they weren't there, but they just saw this cutscene.
Uh-huh.
And then we cut to black after that.
So let's actually just do a little discussion on that, because that was something that was very prominent in classic Torg, at least that I remember. Um, since Torg is based similar to movies, you have acts, you have scenes, you have pieces. There are the times where you can kind of fade away from the the Storm Knights, the player characters, and kind of show them what other characters are doing or thinking. Just like happens in a movie, you're not 100% always just seeing the good guys. A lot of times it goes and you hear, it might not be a big reveal or something, but you'll get snippets of some villains talking or some
Mhm.
important characters that are not around the Storm Knights talking, or around the and protagonists, sorry, talking in a movie. You can use that definitely in Torg Eternity to kind of bring that up and sometimes let them kind of know without saying, okay, out of character, the inspector is going around and
Yeah.
saying that. So, do you use that very often in Torg
I use it
Eternity, or?
occasionally, yeah, like not very often, but I think the one that always comes to mind was we played Into the Mists, one of the Delphi missions in the Nile Empire, and they encountered the Iron Crocodile,
Yes.
and they beat him up, as one does. But a Nemesis card got played on the Iron Crocodile, so um, he basically like sank underneath a sub, but he came back as
Hmm.
Nile villains are wont to do. So I didn't run it as a scene. I actually wrote it as a story afterwards, like between during the week between
Oh,
sessions.
okay.
I gave them kind of like I wrote it as a scene, and it was basically the Iron Crocodile coming in to explain to Wuhan what had happened, and he was like all beat up and like guards dragged him
Uh,
in, right? And then so Wuhan said that he had one more chance, and then he lifted up his hand with his billowy robe and then breathed some kind of green powder into the iron crocodile. He was like, like sort of mutating, his veins
in,
popping, and it made him like more superhuman so that he could be buffed up
uh-huh.
to become a nemesis and then get back in his suit and vow vengeance against the Kestrel, who basically retired after that because he was so incompetent. But you know, but then when he reappeared in Fires of Ra, you're like, oh no, it's the buffed version. Yeah. So I like doing stuff like that, and it really depends on the game. And
Hmm.
because Torg is a little more cinematic, especially now with the flashbacks too,
Right. Yep.
you could do a lot of that kind of cool stuff.
Yeah. So when you mentioned that, I just thought that would be just a nice thing to just kind of point to game masters. Hey, here's a another tool in your toolbox that you can use,
Hmm.
which can kind of
Don't do it too
get.
much.
Yeah, you don't want to do it too much because you don't want to take all the action away from the players. But sometimes like that, it's nice to kind of, okay, you completely bombed the data recovery, so here's a little thing just to
Yeah.
say, hey, that it's I think also important because in a lot of things, once an act is done, it's like done, and those characters don't usually come back, or
Right.
within that, unless they're specific, like Delphi Council high ups that you see the same ones over and over. But just to let them know, hey, this
That Queen
inspector,
Sebastian gives a
yeah,
lot of debriefings.
yeah, he's everywhere, but you know Inspector Destine, who you've never heard of before this mega adventure, no, he's gonna play an important role, but he's gonna be in the background a lot. So, like again, I really like that NPC character. I think he
Hmm.
brings a lot to, as you said with the monks, show that the cyber papacy isn't just like cyber priests and police beaters who are trying to attack and capture or kill the Storm Knights.
Yeah.
They have their own reasoning, and
Every
they're the good
reality.
guys, in their
Yeah.
own mind. So very nice. So, having said that, we will wrap up this adventure. We'll do another break next time and get into or continue with the paths, Pan Pacifica, like we had, and then after that, we'll switch back just so that it's not 14 episodes of Unhallowed Data in a row. We'll kind of mix it up after each act. Again, you can email us at torgdcd@gmail.com. Every once in a while, we read your comments in both Discord and on the YouTube or wherever, but we don't always respond to them. But if it's relevant and interesting, which I thought the drone thing was interesting, then we'll bring those into it as well. And also, if you have any suggestions while we're going to those between acts episodes that you would like to hear or questions you would like answered, you can shoot us email at torgdcd@gmail.com. Having said that, until next time, we hope you have fun in your own Cosmverse. Bye.